What is up, fellow sickos? I'm Dan Favale, coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We're on to another 2025-2026 NBA season look ahead. The Brooklyn Nets are up, which means we have the distinct pleasure of being joined by Lucas Kaplan, covers the Nets and the Liberty for Nets Daily. You can also find his stuff over at Basketball Insiders as well. He does excellent work. Follow him on the socials at Lucas Kaplan. That's at Lucaskaplan. Lucas, year 3 for you. Thank you so much for coming back. How the heck are you?
I could do this in my sleep by this point. I feel super comfortable in the chair. I think this is my first time with Grant, though, but I'm very, very, very excited to be back here because it signals busy season in the NBA, which is always a welcome sign.
Now, this is fun because since it's your first time with Grant, if you won't come back next year, I get to lay the blame at his feet.
It's true.
Rather than
You
my
put it
own.
on me.
So this is
I
great.
am known for my gotcha questions, so just really keep your knees bent, be on your toes for all.
I think we'll have a Kevin Durant, Draymond Green style moment against
Yes.
the Clippers.
That would be, I was going to have a tangent. Oh, Dan, I was about to do a tangent a minute 20 in, but I'm going to reserve that for later. Let's get started here, Lucas. I think we were talking a little bit before we started recording just about kind of how this season feels like things are kind of temporary or new or experimental. That seems, from afar to be part of like, this feels like a pretty like well-planned bottom out effort. Getting both of getting their pick back last year didn't pan out quite the way they might have hoped. They've got another crack at it. Is that sort of the lens through which you're viewing this season? We'll get to all the some of the interesting things that will happen with this team and how young it is and experimental, but like the way the last 2 years went, do you feel like this is like the real honest shot at we gotta be sort of as bad as is possible to be?
Yes, it is. I think that everything that happened this summer is in line with the plan. I don't think they overreacted to falling to the 8th pick or deviated. I think the Cam Johnson, Michael Porter Jr. swap would have been something that made sense whether they got the 1 pick or the 14 pick. They get that 2032 Denver first. So I don't think it's an overreaction maybe to, getting that 8th pick in the draft last year. But I do think if you're just from the outside looking in, and I would imagine organizationally, this is it. You traded 4 Phoenix assets for 2 of your own back. One of them's already conveyed. It was the 8th pick. And by the way, that Phoenix pick was like 2 later.
10th. Yeah.
10th. So you really didn't get a ton out of that swap. So this is the chance. And you got a loaded top of the 2026 draft class. So yes, this is the chance to do that and simultaneously really start this rebuild now that you have some young talent in the room. So yeah, you're on the money, I guess.
When you look at where they are, though, we know they don't have their own 2027 first round pick. So given the spot that they're currently in, to where you can't even look at someone on this roster and say, okay, that's the tentpole of the future. That's clearly the guy. Do you think that we're headed towards a situation where they're going to then continue down this gradual path with complete disregard for that commitment, that obligation that's still headed to Houston? Is that very much TBD on what happens with next year's draft? And they could still have a ton of cap space. And so I'm just very interested to see what internally their timeline is going to end up being because of that obligation and because of, I don't want to say how little they have to show for what's gotten them here, but they probably wanted a higher end prospect than the 5 they got out of the first round this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is year 1 of the rebuild, honestly. Last year was year 0 because they didn't actually have the young building block talent in the room last year. Last year was the mechanism to get it. Now they have some of it. So we can start to evaluate that talent. I would say that because of how much flexibility they have, the future draft assets, the cap space, some tradable contracts, they probably have, my view on it is there's probably a timeline of okay, we're going to start trying to win modestly next year, at least not worry about bottoming out. And then, we have some margins on either side. We can maneuver some things if, a star becomes available that wants to play in New York, we can pick up the phone. But it's really, I think, going to be this year is about trying to maximize that draft pick, and then we'll see. We'll see where we're at, next summer. You hear the flexibility word a lot when you talk to people around the team.
I can't wait to get to the forward-looking stuff with this team, because I think that's where the real, like, we can have some like philosophical discussions about basketball through their picks and stuff. But before we get there, the Cam Thomas situation that resolved the way that it did, I'm curious on you're closer to the whole thing than Dan, or certainly I am. How do you feel about how that played out? Knowing now that like this is not a player, or maybe not, correct me, that this is not a player they view as a long-term piece. What's that going to do for this coming season in terms of his role, like his attitude, how he's used, how much he plays? Like, how does that all square?
I wish I could tell you. I mean, it's a really odd situation. Just they don't have an incentive to play him a ton or to really feature him, right? Like, what is their incentive? Because let's take them at their word, at face value, and say, we do believe in Cam. We've seen his development. We just couldn't get to a number, and we'll revisit these talks in unrestricted free agency next year, and we hope he's here for the long term. I don't think that's a totally unreasonable place to come from. So let's say that it's true. Even presupposing that, why would they feature him a ton in a year they're trying to lose and hopefully re-sign him for a modest number next year? So I have no idea. And Cam Thomas, his game screams contract year no matter what his situation is.
Right.
He's sort of a perpetually contract year kind of guy.
So maybe nothing's different. Maybe he'll just be exactly the same, and we'll all just agree that like this will be cool when he's doing it somewhere else next year, I guess.
Maybe. I mean, I was watching their first preseason game on Saturday. His first bucket coming down and after a nice alley-oop pass off the pick and roll, coming down in semi-transition, 17 on the shot clock, picks up his dribble, pivot, shot fake, pivot, fall away, 14-footer, and cashes it. And it's like, well, I think this sets the tone for the year. You are still Cam Thomas, and frankly, I think a fairly valuable offensive player, but you're Cam Thomas. So I don't really know what to expect this year other than maybe we're all expecting too much and it'll just be more of the same. And I don't really see him totally changing his value to the Nets and the rest of the league this year, regardless of what happens. And he also has to stay healthy. He has sneakily had some pretty consistent injury troubles in his career, including 4 hamstring strains last year. And, he came into camp like looking slimmer, but it is a question of, well, you do need to be durable. I don't think that's helping his value either. So a big year for him, but probably not in the situation that he would draw up, I guess.
I'm wondering if him having the implicit no trade now, do you think that makes it less likely that he's actually moved because this is a play for him to get to for unrestricted free agency next summer? Or is there like value in if the Nets aren't going to use him or feature him as heavily if we're, let's say we get to December or something and they've moved on from the Cam Thomas experiment, does actually make it maybe more likely that it's this implicit no trade, but he will go anywhere that wants him because it means that he just might have a more prominent role?
I think the former. I think that he paid $4 million for this no trade clause. If you look at some of the reporting, it was the Nets did offer him a 1-year, $10 million deal that did not have a no trade clause. But he accepted the 1-year, $6 million qualifying offer, which does come with that kind of no trade clause. He already didn't get the money he wanted. And then he was like, here's another $4 million because I'm pretty fed up with this, and I just want to control my future as much as possible. So I think he is probably not getting traded. At least I think it did actually decrease the likelihood of it. But it just screams to me a guy that wants to take full control of his career, and he said those words. And whatever that means to him, we'll see. I don't really know if it is getting traded to a contender, maybe coming off the bench and like playing on a playoff team. If I had to guess for him, it means more like let me show out and try to put myself in a good position where more teams have cap space next summer. And, you talk to people and it's like, I just don't know if he really believes and understands kind of how the league is currently looking at him. I don't think the money necessarily would have been there this summer. And I don't know what he can do realistically to change that perception next summer.
It feels like his archetype of player, I don't want to use the term
Right.
is under siege, but like that's not, I don't know. He'd go out and score 25 points a game for the Nets this season. I don't know if it would actually materially change his value. Like Jalen Green got the windfall, but it was short term and he was viewed as a trade asset. Look at what Quentin Grimes goes off and Philly isn't able to get a deal now. Look at the way that Anthony Simons is kind of viewed. And it's what even Tyler Hero, where people, as soon as he got his second deal, people are like, oh, like this is just, so he's not the level of playmaker of most of those guys that we just named. And so I just wonder for him, and I'm wondering if this is a general question about the archetype of player, is does it make more sense to be on a good team, to come off the bench and help drive winning or positive minutes, because that might get you paid if it proves that you can be more plug and play or coexist on this good team rather than be close to the guy or like a B option.
Can I just say that I've written this many times? I would be so infuriated if I looked across the coastline, across the map, and I saw Jalen Green making $35 million in Phoenix. If I was Cam Thomas, okay, he got drafted higher. I kind of think Cam is better. He makes shots. He's a legitimately good jump shooter. I would just be so, and I think he does. And he's like, that is infuriating, and I get it for him. But it's really interesting that you mention that, because I think you're right. Like, if a guy like that were to go to contribute to winning, come off the bench, right, or start or whatever, that would signify a lot of value. But, what's really interesting, and it's really in the last 10 years or so, we don't really have like, the bench guy that comes in and does this one thing and scores, and then you take him out. Like, you look at really good bench pieces, and they're like complementary pieces to the starting lineup. They're different looks. They can fit with your starters instead of, come in off the bench and kind of run things and give us a scoring boost. Obviously, those guys are in the league and have a valuable place in the league. But to be a really good bench player, it's almost like a change of pace, like running back. Like, you want the guy who can pass block and it allows you to run this. You want the guy that can run between the tackles or outside. Like, you look at the Pacers, they don't go to Obi Toppin or whoever else they bring off the bench. Neesmith, Nemhard, those guys started. Who
Like
else came off?
Shepard coming off the bench. Yeah.
Am I yeah, thank you. I was losing my mind. Ben Shepard. They don't bring those guys in to like run the offense and do their own thing. They bring them in to give the starters a different look, to give Tyrese Halliburton a different kind of outlet. And Cam Thomas, I don't really know if he can do that. If he can give your best players a different look, or if he's just going to be on the court and it's like, well, if you play Cam, you have to put the ball in his hands, but then you also have to play a defensive guard next to him, and then you also have to have this. Like, that is not what the NBA wants out of their supporting pieces right now.
I always think of it as teams are viewing their roster construction in a lot of ways through like a playoff lens, which one means if you're a specialist of this variety in particular, you just like Cam Thomas maybe can't defend well enough to get you through 3 playoff series. And it's like, well, that's not really an issue at the moment, but like that's still the lens he gets viewed through. And then also like the best version of these types of players we're talking about are like, they have to be a huge part of what you do. And I think teams have decided like, we're better off just moving it around a lot than getting a guy with a huge usage rate that's below average as a true shooting percent or whatever. Not that actually Thomas is kind of on the high end of those types of guys in terms of his efficiency, but like he's just lumped in with, he's got to be longing for the days of like Jamal Crawford and Lou Williams and early Jordan Clarkson. Like, those guys are who, like, if they had a market, and I guess Thomas just doesn't now.
And I'm sure he hears that and probably feels a little slighted. Like, he did, and I've written about his flaws a lot, youngest player to ever score 40 in 3 straight games. Like, he's had these moments where you watch him and it's like, oh, this is really advanced for a 21, 22-year-old and is actually dragging them to wins through sheer scoring. But ultimately, that is kind of how the league views him right now. And it's so hard to be a score-first guy in the NBA. Like, the bar is just so high if that's what you do to be good. And it's not really a huge slight that teams don't view him as capable of being that on a good team right now.
So we're going to talk about Cam Johnson and MPJ, but this is just such a ripe segue into, like, as for comparison's sake, if Cam Thomas is a type of player that's out of favor, the Nets had 5 first-round picks and used them all, and they really seem to skew towards guys with a very different skill set than what Thomas has, just to kind of jump from one issue to the other. So I really want your take on just generally, were you surprised they used all 5 of those first rounders? That's like, if I had been betting on it, I would have said there's no way. And then what are your thoughts on, like, we can go through them individually, but is there a through line, a skill set, a consistent thing that they seemed to be looking for with those players that they took in the first round?
Yeah, there was I forget who tweeted this. I should know this, but someone tweeted this after the draft night. There were 3 players in the draft that averaged 6 assists per 36 minutes. The Nets took all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And Danny Wolf had the second highest assist rate ever for any 7-footer in the NCAA. And you watched the press conferences and you heard them talk about 0.5 decision-making, getting on or off the ball, just this belief that if you stack as many willing, competent decision makers on the floor at once, it leads to good offense. And it's it is a black and white bet in this direction. And, they also drafted Drake Powell, who's kind of like a 3-and-D wing who can't really do much on offense right now. But that is, even if you think, oh, well, they were just taking best player available, it should tell you about what they think the best player available was, that they all kind of have this sort of skill set. So that's the other interesting layer to the Cam Thomas thing. It's like, well, this team just seemingly made a huge bet against the sort of stuff that you do. Very specifically you. So there is that too. But yeah, it was a very, in my mind, unambiguous draft philosophy that they carried out. And I'm excited to see it. Like, to be different, you have to act different. So I'm genuinely, I didn't love it at the time. I've talked myself into at least being kind of morbidly fascinated by it.
The criticism would be, like, if you have all these first round picks, you should be taking cracks at, like, the guy with the highest superstar ceiling, but maybe that guy wasn't there. I think I'm curious about your take on, and this will require you to get inside the head of Sean Marks and the Nets, like, player evaluation staff, so it's unfair. But do you view this bent as more of like a copycat thing? Like, look what the Pacers accomplished with smart offensive players and movement and good passers and all this stuff. Or is it like a broader market inefficiency where it's kind of like, maybe this is the skill set you have to play basketball in 2025 effectively?
I would lean to the latter. I think it is more of that. And I also think it is a very clear-eyed acknowledgement of their situation in that, listen, we're probably not going to be great unless a superstar finds their way to Brooklyn in the next 3 or 4 years. And if one of these willing passing guards really hits, then who better to kind of play with one of those stars? I think it's kind of both. Mm-hmm. And the reason that the draft hurt at the time, other than like, the Nets are perceived to be reaching on guys, and then it pans to their war room just going insane on the broadcast, which is, whatever, who cares? But a very funny look is that it feels like, right, you draft these, at least with the 3 guards, their entire pre-NBA careers have been high pick and roll, the basketball's in your hand. And it feels now like they, A, have to cannibalize each other, right? Like, It's hard to imagine all 3 of them succeeding in this environment. And B, you also didn't get maybe value, relative to their draft slot. So that kind of, I think, dampened the mood for me and many others on draft night. But in the months since, it's like, well, they're doing something different, and I'm at least, I'm excited to see. So I've talked myself into it since that night, but those worries still exist.
I'm wondering if there's an element of, and it's specifically like it ties to Yegor Demin specifically to where it's, are they looking at the quality in these guys to where, okay, when you're looking at the assists or the way that they play, they think those players might be more easily adaptable. Because I was going to ask you about the vision
Yeah.
for Yegor, where when you look at Summer League, I watched a lot of him at Summer League, he was off the ball, like he was knocking down jumpers, very malleable positionally. But then there's also still, I think the biggest concern with him is like, is this a guy who, when he's on the ball, can he touch the paint? Like, can he touch the paint with those on ball touches? So, what have you, I guess, your early impressions of like their vision for him, especially against the backdrop of, okay, they did draft all these, at least two of these other guys that want the ball in their hands?
I think the sell is this. He was a career in many leagues and many settings, 36% 3-point shooter before BYU as a pro, in Europe. And they think he can shoot. And so if you think he can shoot and he just kind of couldn't last year or got, a raw deal, raw sample size, whatever, he's a pretty good statistical prospect because all of his flaws come from the lack of 3-point shooting. He took a lot of them and he only made 27%, which kind of depressed everything else. But the other sell of that is like, yes, he doesn't really have a lot of bend, a lot of juice. He didn't really touch the paint. Well, he led one of the 5 best offenses in college basketball last year, and they plummeted when he was off the floor. And so the bet is if you just put this tall, passing guy that we think can shoot on the floor, that's a productive offensive player in any context. And even if he can't really shake people, his ability to pass and read the floor at 6'9" is going to play somewhat. So if they think he can shoot, I get it. It'll be interesting to see, as you mentioned, like how much of his reps are really on ball, how much are off ball. Like, do they really just think he's supercharged, hopefully, Joe Ingles, like tall passing shooting wing, or do they want to kind of mold him into more of an on-ball player? So his usage is going to be something really key to watch this year. And if he can figure out a way to like get to the paint at all against NBA defenders.
Do you view, say, that just to get the kind of the next two, really the more primary ball handling guards, Traore and Saraf, like of those two, I guess, do you think one of them profiles more as like the we're spamming pick and rolls type, or like, because it seems like Jemin is maybe, we're fine with him on the second side being a connective passer. He can run a pick and roll if the defense is, if we swing it to him, but that maybe he's not going to be pounding the dribble. Like of those other two guys, that seems more like the archetype. Correct me again if I'm wrong. And of the two, like, do you have a sense of which of them might be more ready and ultimately successful in that more conventional, I guess, lead guard role?
They both kind of have the similar promise, and they get there in different ways.
Okay.
Traore is, I'm going downhill a million miles an hour, and I'm trying to finish with my right hand, and if not, I'm spraying the ball out. And Saraf is more like, I'm kind of big, I have a very tight handle, I'm kind of dropping you off with the shoulder and elbow and spinning and Euro stepping, but ultimately I'm trying to get into the paint and, work my way out from there. So I think both kind of have that promise. I think Saraf, who started in that preseason game and who I would bet to start on opening night, is more ready. Like, I don't think he can shoot, but he won't look overwhelmed. Like, he's big and very professional handle. I don't know who. I guess it's too early to say who I would put my chips in on, but those two really feel like the Nets being like, well, one of them is probably going to be good.
What do you think about that approach? Because that's kind of the other like macro. Like, you have all these picks, you could have diversified, they didn't, and we've talked a little bit about why. Do you think there's a concern of there's just not enough to kind of go around in terms of size of role for all these guys to get a real shot, individually? Or is it like, well, if any of them's any good, they're going to show it regardless, like, is that kind of the bet?
I think the bet really is, we're not a small market team. We don't have to we're not the Grizzlies where we have to hit on these picks as they have on Bane, Jackson, and Ja. I know Ja and Jaren are like top 5, but they did a great job, right? The Nets are like, well, we don't necessarily have to build like that because teams and stars will want to come here. And we have the assets to trade for them or attract them in free agency, whatever. So therefore, we just need to land like one of these complementary skill sets are always like willing, good decision makers. And so if we stack Egor and Traore and Saraf, and yeah, well, one of them will probably cannibalize the rest. And if Ben is really good, then when is Traore going to play? We'll probably, we have to cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think that's kind of the guiding philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's super unlikely both of them will be good, but if one of them is, we've accomplished our goals and we are now ready to go star hunting. I think that, if I had to guess, is where they're coming from. I hope that answered that.
It's a shotgun approach, and then they have the luxury of being like, well, we missed with 4, but we hit the 1, and that's the guy.
Yeah. And Wolf and Powell, like, they can certainly coexist with the other guys. And if they're good, then you got maybe 2 or 3 good NBA players in one draft, which is tough to complain about.
How do you think, because you mentioned Powell and Wolf, like do you expect all 5 of these guys, when they're healthy, to just be in the rotation? No? Is someone you're less confident that will get actual playing time this year than others?
I think Powell's going to live in the G League. And they've been good about that. Like, I think that's a good thing. If you look at their draft picks that are maybe turned into real NBA players, Claxton, Sharp, Cam Thomas, even Noah Clowney, who might become something, all spent a lot of time in the G League, and it was good for them. So Powell's like a lot of G League run. I think whatever of the guards isn't playing a ton is going to be in the G League. Danny Wolf is not going to play right away ahead of Nick Claxton, Day'Ron Sharp, Noah Clowney, Zaire Williams, Michael Porter Jr., if you view those guys as like 4s. So later in the year, yes, but I think if you're tuning into the Nets on Halloween and you're like, let's see the 5 rookies, you will be sorely disappointed.
That's more of a March thing, probably.
Yeah, hopefully February, but yes. Nets fans, the comments of Nets Daily will be obscene after they lose by 20 to the Grizzlies in November, and like the rookies get a total of like 20 minutes.
Look, there just needs to be a game where they are the starting lineup, though. Like, all 5 of them just need to be the starters. That needs to happen.
I'm going to jump ahead, your question of the funky lineup you want to see. I don't think there's been an easier answer in the history of the show.
Right. Yep. Get them all out there.
I'll think of something else, but that has to be it.
Yeah.
Well, what is Danny Wolf to you, positionally? I know we don't get too bogged down by positions, but I don't look at him, okay, he has the size. I'm like, yeah, he could play center. I don't know if you want him to. And then he thinks, like, the way he handles the ball and, like, works on it, I guess he could be a wing, but I don't necessarily look at him and think, no, like, that's a guy who could be a wing. I kind of worry. I don't know if it's a worry, but I kind of wonder, is this someone who ends up being, like, a pure 4 almost? Maybe a little bit more dynamic because of what he could do on the ball, but I struggle to see the vision for him in the NBA is what I'm getting at.
I said this the other day, and you would have loved it, so I'll repeat it. He's like if Andre Blatch had as much passing flair as he did mid-range step-back flair. Like, he's like if Andre liked to pass, and my favorite net growing up. He felt like he shot 80% from the mid-range. He is huge. I didn't really realize that. He's like legitimately 7 feet tall, 250, like big. He's 21, not 19 like the other guys, so a little bit.
So he's done growing.
He's done growing.
Yeah,
done bulking. But he's huge. And so he has more like, he's kind of not a force at the rim, but like you're not just going right around him or through him. And he showed some of that in Summer League. Like, he had a game where he had like 2 steals and 4 blocks, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So that is kind of the bonus, the sell on him playing the 5, quote unquote, because man, if he's playing the 4 and he has to like X out on the weak side or like play between 2 shooters, that to me feels worse than if he's just like, all right, like stay near the rim, try not to do too much wrong. And then, yeah, he has a lot of like funky skills. He can move, he can dribble, he can pass. On offense, it's just like, dude, you're kind of a career 30% 3-point shooter and 65% free throw shooter. So like,
yeah, what's with the free throw line stuff?
So like, can you actually shoot? Like,
Yeah.
you need to actually shoot for this to work. So he is he's So long answer short, I don't know. I have no idea what he's going to be. But hopefully all of these skills mesh into one valuable player.
Can we pin you down on which of the five? You don't have to say like this guy will be the best player 5 years from
No,
now.
you
but
do.
Who's
You
most
do.
well? Okay, Dan says you do, so you do. Who's most interesting to you right now? Like who's the guy of the five that you're watching that's kind of like there's some there, and I'm most interested to see what that becomes.
It's between Egor and Ben. Yeah, I think Egor, because it's just like, man, what are the limits on a guy that can like really not dribble or explode by NBA defenders?
Yeah.
How valuable can just the court mapping, height, and hopefully shooting be? Like, what are the upper limits of that? Like,
Just like, what's the comp, right? Like, who do you point to? Like, who is that guy that's really excelled with that makeup?
I don't know. I mean, that's why I keep going back to Joe Ingles, but like,
What if Kyle Anderson could shoot?
what if Kyle Anderson could shoot is a good one? But like, are they gonna try to make him? Is he gonna be on the ball? Like that's the thing. Those guys were always pretty much big wings, right? Mm-hmm. Egor, his whole life was, here's the ball, high pick and roll. We're up tempo, pro style offense at BYU. We're one of the best in the country because the ball's always in your hands and you're whipping it around. So it's just fascinating. I don't know. I mean, and you know, on top of like the fact that they draft him 8th. The Suns released their war room video of them laughing at the Nets for doing that.
Suns shouldn't be laughing at anybody.
I was going to say. And I loved Malowach. Oh, and I love Egor, too. He's like such a sweet, innocent 19-year-old Russian kid who like drops these banger quotes about how basketball is art and how he wants to play pretty. Like in his second language in a new country, going to Brighton Beach, eating borscht in the Russian neighborhoods of New York. I'm all in. He seems like a cool dude.
I didn't know about those quotes. He just won my heart. That's great.
Yeah, I'll read one to you later.
The reaction to the Nets picking him, I was like surprised by. He was pretty high up on my unofficial board when like Grant and I were talking. I think he's the limitations. I totally get there of getting the paint touches, but someone who could decision make like him, if you believe in the jumper, there's no way for him to be bad in my eyes.
Right. I mean, if you believe he can shoot, then it changes his whole profile because it all of a sudden he's an efficient, good passing, again, tall, like, and all of his statistical things. Oh, well, his box plus minus against good comp, his true shooting. Well, if you think he's going to shoot, then you can kind of throw that out the window. And the Nets are unequivocally betting on that. And then the Ben part of it is just like, was he undersold as like a legitimate 6'5", 6'6", like big professional ball handler? Like, won't that just always play and maybe he won't be the worst shooter in the league? So yeah, and I also was just like, well, he's off to a good start. Like you hear about him in camp, he's starting. Like that's a pretty good start to his career. So yeah, that's where I'm at with those two guys.
Okay.
I was gonna say, what's gonna be the Cam Johnson and Michael Porter Jr. transition is kind of a twofold question. I think the first one is like, what's going to be the biggest difference for the Nets offensively going from Cam Johnson to Michael Porter Jr.?
It seems like MPJ's talked about like playing through the high post. I think Cam Johnson, for all of his lack of like explosion burst, like you really could run him around, dribble handoffs, pin downs, get him into like pick and roll-esque actions, you know, where there is a screen at the top of the floor. He is coming off of it, whether it's a handoff or an off-ball screen, and he's like diagramming. And he got really, really good at that, like, or just at least better than I ever thought he would be. And it seems like they just maybe aren't sure MPJ is going to replicate the same, like, you really running around? Are you really getting low, you know, off a ball screen? You are 6'10" with a bad back. So maybe less of that. Maybe that's more of a Egor Demin thing. But still just like an outlet that's going to shoot a lot of threes, which they want, and generally provide somewhat of the same role, even if like the specifics are going to be a little different.
do you think they're going to juice his on-ball touches? Because when you go back his time in Denver, like the dribbles per touch, the amount of time he spends off the ball in his offensive possessions, through the roof. And now he's on this team to where I don't know anyone who's watched MPJ and thought like, yeah, like that dude needs to create for himself and others more. But we've never actually seen it in high doses. And this is a team, in theory, despite drafting at least 3 guys who really want to, maybe 4, who really want to operate on the ball, would have the license to be like, well, let's see what this looks like.
Yeah, I think there will be. I think there's a decent trade-off here where like they're going to run him around a little bit off the ball, and he had like a designed backdoor cut for a dunk the other day in preseason. So it's like, listen, you do that for us, you rebound, you defend. Here are your on-ball touches as the highest paid member of the team. I think there is definitely going to be some of that. I'm interested to see how they come. Like, I don't think he'll be just handling high pick and roll. He, again, has talked about more out of the high post. So, yes, I can't say that's the part of the Nets season I'm looking forward to the most. But, yes, there will be more.
Kind of pivoting, I mean, I guess how Jordi Fernandez chooses to use MPJ is going to tie this question to the previous one. But just broadly, from afar last season, the view was Jordi Fernandez did too good of a job from the jump for what this team was going for. They won too many games. I think that does a little bit of a disservice to some of the talent on the roster that maybe was a little underrated. But what do you, if you could give us a glimpse into the sort of the why? Like, it's easy to say, oh, he did too well. Like, what kinds of things can you attribute to Jordi Fernandez as a head coach that led to more success than was expected? And from there, like, what do you think the core sort of principles are of his coaching philosophy as they'll now be applied to this new roster?
I mean, I want to get back to the talent part of that because I think it's an interesting organizational question, but they were just prepared with a game plan a lot of the time. And like, you look at the Suns last year, there's a game over there, like, the Kings, they're like kind of a new-ish team figuring some stuff out, and the Nets come in with like, this is our game plan, this is what we're doing. And in the early part of the year, like, I'm thinking about it this year. I used this the other day. Let's say they play the Magic, who are way more talented. But, it's like, oh, where's Bane getting his offense? And like, how are we the 2-man game? The Nets are going to come in with a game plan, and they're going to execute it. And it's like, that can, that leads to some wins early in the year. So it's that. And they just played really hard. And they played the most aggressive defense in the league in terms of blitzing and trapping on screens. And if you weren't ready for that in a January game before the All-Star break, like, you were going to turn it over 20 times and maybe not shoot so well from 3 because you're not getting great looks and you're a little tired. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, right? He got a lot of guys who are fighting for their NBA careers to play hard. Big surprise. But he did, and they did always know what they were doing on offense. Like, they had very good hits and reads out of, like, high pick and roll, dribble handoff game, right? If you get trapped here, it's going there. We're 45 cutting here. We're cutting on the baseline here. And I think their just ability to consistently do that led to a few more wins than, the talent would have suggested. Especially a little later in the year.
I guess that leads into the roster this year having like this youth infusion, but in which you might liken to guys playing for their NBA career. Not quite the same thing, but it's like guys that are going to be motivated to get after it. There's also this contingent of older guys, MPJ being one, Terrence Mann, Haywood Highsmith when he's healthy. I guess you throw Nick Claxton in there, and then there's kind of an in-between group. Players at different stages of their careers, do you have a sense of like, because it seems like a Jordi Fernandez team is tactically prepared and plays hard. Do you have a sense of how he might be able to manage what could be like some personalities and some agendas, and like not everybody wants the same thing on this roster necessarily because they're at different points of their careers. Do you have a sense of like, I guess it's his like interpersonal stuff, like, because it's gonna be a bigger challenge in some respects this year than last.
Yeah, I think it's just year 2 of a guy that is really gonna push you and demand that you sacrifice. And if you look at the roster, there's like all 15 guys on this team probably are like, well, I think I have a case for minutes.
Yeah.
I'm a vet or I'm a high draft pick. Like, why shouldn't I be playing? And it was probably easier to balance that last year. And, we'll see this year. There's no indication that he won't be able to. But, I think guys, especially if you look at the kind of guys they have, Zaire Williams, Kobe Bufkin, like reclamation projects or lower draft picks trying to make the jump into NBA relevancy, they appreciate getting coached, or they're not going to react poorly to like getting coached real hard and getting asked to play a really aggressive style of defense all game if that's what they have to do for their NBA careers. So I think the more interesting question will be if they get really good eventually, is he still going to be able to push these buttons? But I think this year he should be okay. Even if Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas are like not the greatest, most active defenders.
Well, and that was gonna be my next question too, because you mentioned all the aggressive defense that they played. They still have the personnel. Like even look at some of the inbound youngsters coming in. When you're talking about Egor, when you're even talking about Saraf, like do you think that those guys have the ability to play not just that aggressive style, but consistently play that aggressive style for X amount of minutes per game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as long as they're trying, and I think they will. Like it might not be perfect. Like I will always be a Nick Claxton believer. He says his back's good. Let's say he's about it this year. You get 48 minutes of Claxton Day'Ron. That's like a real center rotation in the league. Day'Ron's gotten so much better. He can move his feet. So you got these big centers that are kind of just intimidating at the point of attack. You got Zaire and Michael Porter Jr. And, they're not the greatest defenders, but they're also pretty long, pretty big. So is Noah Clowney. Like there is enough insulation to where I do want to see them get after it, and I'm sure the conditioning and guarding NBA guards is going to be tough, but I don't suspect that they won't be able to at least run out this game plan and see what happens.
Well, you mentioned Nick Claxton. Oh,
yeah, I was going to go ahead, Dan.
Nice.
You can ask the Claxton question.
I love
both
Claxton.
Interested.
Please,
Right.
This is year 3 of this.
Right. Where does he fit in now? But now it's even like more opaque than ever. Is where does he fit into like this team's overall larger vision?
Because you can't trade him. Because he makes $25 million a year, and it's like probably a negative asset as viewed by other teams. And the Nets
I
aren't
want to
going
tell you something, Lucas. All the other teams are wrong.
I
They're
could
wrong.
I could not agree with you more. Yeah, Nick was the guy when I actually started like trying to cover and like really watch basketball. That was just I'm like, I think this guy's good. And then he had that year in 23. So now I'm like forever just indebted to him and like my favorite player. But he makes $25 million a year. The Nets have no reason to dump an asset and like attach a pick, right? So that's not going to happen. But it's also like you were really, really good at the age of 23. You were like 9th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. I thought you could have been higher. You led the league in field goal percentage. A legitimately great finisher around the rim.
Off drives and shit.
Off drives, like posting up smalls. I thought you were a top 50, 60 player in the league that year, and you were 23. There's no way that's gone. There's no way that's just gone forever. And I know that he is a leaner guy, and the shift to like double big lineups and offensive rebounding has kind of hurt him a little, and I'm okay saying, okay, that'll dim his impact a little. But somewhere that's inside of you, and 29 other teams must have one eye on that. And so, you have the contract for now, but at some point we have to see that again. And I don't know what that looks like on this team where they are trying to maximize their pick and you are maybe not the most clean fit into their long-term plans. So I just don't know. But also if you come out and you are playing really well again and motivated, like what are the Nets going to do? Like he probably needs to do it for a whole year to reclaim the trade value. You can't just trade him. So is he going to mess up the tank, or is he going to keep declining from his age 23 season, which I just refuse to believe will be his career arc?
So do
Is that the Ben Simmons arc at that point?
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Don't invoke that name. There are versions of this team that could better set up Claxton to be like the best, like more successful, right? Like because if in theory he's out there, if you had to put him in one bucket or the other, he's a dependent offensive player. like he's going to benefit more from setups than being like a self-starter.
Yeah.
But if you're playing with a bunch of rookie playmakers, like that's as good as they may be for their experience level, like that's not ideal for him. Do you think there will be situations this year where Claxton is out there with like what passes for the veteran core of this team, and like suddenly he looks like his 23-year-old self? Or do the Nets just not even want to mess around with competent, like experienced lineups?
Out of that, it all comes back to that question for everybody on this team, right? Like last year, I would have told you, you can't start this lineup on opening night. They had Dennis Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, Dorian, and Nick Claxton. And they brought Day'Ron and Zaire off the bench. I'm like, you're not winning a playoff series, but you're also not tanking. You guys, that's too good. And what do you know? They were 9-10. And that set up the whole season. And so this year, the messaging hasn't changed. It's, we want to compete. We're running out the best guys. I don't think their lineup is as good as that right now. But it's not bad. And if you get Nick, it's not atrocious. And if you get Nick Claxton playing like Nick Claxton again, like, he's going to steal you some, I don't know. So, I don't know. It just all comes back to that. Like, what is this organization prepared to do this year? Because you got one pick this year, and it's your own. You don't have 5. Point being, I wouldn't be surprised Nick Claxton either way. Like, they are rookie guards, but I do think this will be a better passing team either way. And it's really on him. Like, his back, he had an epidural last year. There were times last year he wasn't even touching like the top of the square. He just didn't look the same. So if that's back, he can only be so bad. I don't know. It's that last question is really the thing that is most intriguing to me about this team and will determine the most.
Another player I think that probably undercovered just because he has virtually zero track record for how long he's been in the league is Kobe Bufkin. The type of guy a Dan favorite, I'll just say it for him, but he's the type of guy that we always, Dan and I talk like, perfect second draft candidate. Like, why wouldn't you take a crack at this guy if you're a team in the Nets position? Because who knows, right? Especially with him. Is he someone that is maybe in the way of some of these rookies? Will the Nets even allow that to be the circumstance? And then, like,
they gave up a whole $110,000.
Right,
today.
they spent 9 or 6
more than I
figures
have
on this guy. Like, is he a piece of this, or is it just a pure flyer that like he'll have to show something incredible to crack this rotation?
His rookie contract extension date is October 31st. So, I mean, it was really, truly the cheapest way to get to the salary floor. And I think that was the primary motivation for the trade. But
doesn't reflect well on him as a player.
But if we're, cards on the table, who's the best guard on this team right now? It's him. Like, it's obviously him. So if Jordi is being for real, not counting Cam Thomas. So if Jordi's for real about, you have to earn it, and like the best players will play, it's like we should see Kobe. And this is kind of the Nets should be doing this second draft stuff. So he needs to show something. I want him to show something. I think however they view their cap table will inform if they pick up that option more so than his play. But I don't know if they're going to let him get in the way, but they're certainly going to give him an opportunity. I don't view so much overlap as like of him and the plan for the rookies. Again, I think there's going to be a lot of G League play in their future, in their immediate future.
Do you have any of the other like non-core players on the roster, whether it's like a Noah Clowney or who are on the roster for now, I should say, or a Jalen Wilson or a Zaire Williams that you find especially intriguing as the Nets go forward with this season and also beyond?
I think Noah is the most intriguing one. I mean, it would have been Day'Ron last year, but I think the Day'Ron arc has kind of been cemented. Like, wow, this guy turned himself into like a valuable backup big. Like, he might actually just be a good NBA player. Noah is interesting because, A, nobody's watched him at all because why would you? He's like, the Nets were not super interesting last year. But his rookie year, it started in Summer League. He looked absolutely unplayable. He gets better by the week in the G League his rookie year, and he kind of lights the Nets on fire in the last month in like meaningless March, April basketball. I said this the other day, but just super unethical stat queries on StatHead of like teenagers to record multiple threes and blocks in a game. Him,
Believe
Jaren,
me,
and Wemby.
I cited some irrational Noah Clowney stats in like breakout picks last year. It's like this time last year, I was like, this is clearly the guy.
Absolute crime on the stat queries was Noah Clowney's kind of rookie season. And then last year he starts pretty decently and he sprains his ankle 4 times, and every time he comes back he sprains it again, and like the 3-point shooting's kind of down. He's so skinny and can't really throw his weight around, and he can't do anything once he breaks the paint or once he gets run off the line. But classic training camp Weight Watchers, he's buff. Everyone's talking about how big he looks. He looks like a professional shooter now. And his role's kind of more defined. They've accepted that he just doesn't have the juice to be like a full-time 5, so he's a big wing. Like, hopefully he's doing something like Santi Aldama stuff from the corners. Less talent, less flair, but probably better on defense, hopefully. Like, he has pretty great defensive instincts. So that could be a player. Like, if it's going to happen for him, he's got to show something this season, but I really think it could happen. So I am intrigued by him.
This is just interjecting on a tangent here, but I mentioned this when I was doing the Utah Jazz look ahead. Do we feel like muscle watch has changed? I feel like I've seen more about players slimming down to where it's been more like GLP-1 watch this year.
The Nets had both. They had Day'Ron getting slimmer and Noah getting bigger. I think we are in a new progressive accepting era of all sorts of body transformations. And I love that for the league.
I would love that too, except the Luka Doncic discourse makes me think otherwise, where it's like he needed to get abs for people to think that he might be an MVP candidate or something.
That is a good point. We're insulated over here in Nets world.
Go ahead, Grant. I was going to say, unless you have any other players you want to discuss, are you ready to enter the cookie cutter portion of the podcast?
Dariq Whitehead needs to do something soon.
That's rough.
It's getting late early. That's all.
What do you imagine him doing ideally? Like, what's the role that he would need to fill?
Just
save his career, I guess. I don't know if that's too harsh.
No, it's not. Just continuing to like make threes, but also showing that he's like an NBA level athlete.
Which is so wild to think that's the concern about him.
Wild. And like something inside the arc, like with a little bit of a tighter handle. Just something. I need it. He's like the nicest guy. I really want it for him. But yeah, that's it.
All right, so we will go into the lightning round / cookie cutter portion of the podcast. What you look at this roster right now, Lucas, what, aside from saying they need like a centerpiece of the future, like what is this team's single biggest need as we sit here today?
So probably a dribble, pass, shoot guy. They have a lot of 2 of the 3 or 1 of the 3 players, but a guy that can dribble, pass, and shoot.
Is there anything about this team that, like, we all understand sort of what the basic narrative of the 25-26 Nets is, but is there something, whether it's a player, something that you think this team will be good at, really bad at, that's under-discussed, under the radar, that, like, for a national audience, maybe we need to pay more attention to it?
I think they're a genuinely interesting philosophical team. Like, they are betting on all-out aggression on defense, being the most well-conditioned team in the league. Everyone says that, and I'm sure the Nets are saying it to an extent, but Jordi has become kind of renowned for how cardio-focused his training camps are, and last year they were often the more well-conditioned team when they played opponents. So it's a bet on that and a bet on just consistent decision-making and passing. And this is like year 1 of this, really, maybe year 2. So I don't think you'll get the full fruits of watching this pretty bad team this year. But they are a genuinely interesting project in terms of that. Like, how far can those 2 things take you? Being a well-conditioned, aggressive defense and being a 0.5-second team on offense.
If I were to ask you, which I'm about to, if I were to force you, which I'm about to build a 10-man rotation, for this team? Who are the 10 guys that you're putting in it? Because you know why this is interesting for them? They've become a little like Wizardsy to where it's like they just have a bunch of guys. We don't know who's the guy yet.
Yeah.
And even less so than the Wizards, but they just have like right now, like they're probably going to cut someone who needs to, or waive someone who needs to belongs in the NBA, or at least is worth a look. So who are the 10 guys you're playing right now?
Is this like to win a basketball game tomorrow?
Well, that's the question. Because it's a very different answer, right?
think,
like you could have completely different looks.
Right. I would say no. Like, so if let's frame it this way for the Nets. Who do you think ends up being the 10 most played players this season by Brooklyn?
Okay, let me get their roster in front of me. This is a practice I developed during the Ben Simmons days when I would just straight up forget he was on the roster. So now I have to look at the roster listed out before I do this ever. I think Cam Thomas. Yeah, of the 10, we could have questions about his role and his minutes, but yeah. Cam Thomas, Zaire Williams, Day'Ron Sharpe, Nick Claxton. That's 4. Egor Demin.
Rookies. There we go.
Egor and Ben, I think, 5, 6. Michael Porter Jr., 7. Noah Clowney, 8. Terrence Mann, 9, though I don't feel great about it. And I'm between Danny Wolf and Tyrese Martin.
Who do you think is starting opening night? Who's the first unit day one? Assuming health.
Yeah, I would say probably Ben Saraf. Because Egor has had this plantar fascia issue in his foot, and like he's not even doing contact yet. So even if he's ready, I don't think he'll be starting. Ben Saraf, Cam Thomas, Michael Porter Jr., Nick Claxton, Terrence Mann.
Who's like, Mann's just here, he's perfect for how they want to defend. Though.
He's here to give really good quotes about how downtown Brooklyn has been gentrified since he grew up there, and so it's like it's always a good lead for every beat writer when he's like, I remember when this when it was a Modell's. And we're all like,
the Brooklyn Nets hope to undergo a similar transformation in the rebuilding program. Sorry.
All right, well don't give too much away.
What about a closing lineup? Like,
let's say they're trying to win.
They're trying to win this game tonight. Who's on the floor the last 5 minutes, assuming it's close?
Oh, God. I did this the other day. I actually think you have to get just the adults and the defense in the room. So I actually think it's Cam Thomas, MPJ, Haywood Highsmith, Zaire Williams, and Nick Claxton. Like maybe Terrence Mann over Haywood if whoever's like shooting the ball better that night type of thing. But ultimately,
I still think it's ridiculous they got Haywood Highsmith while getting a second, unless he's just completely cooked from that injury.
Nothing.
But it said he was going to be ready for the regular season. I don't know what the Heat. Did the Heat not know they have until the end of the year to get out of the tax? Did someone not tell them? I'm still.
I don't know. Literally nothing.
Not the point, but
feel free to break news now that he's like actually 35 years old and it's just been a ruse. It's like a Buddy Hield situation.
Didn't we have a Jay Huff birthday malfeasance situation this year on Twitter? Remember?
I don't know. I always point to Buddy Hield as like it's like, yeah, of course he's like.
Yeah, we had a Jay Huff. The NBA account reported they were like wishing a happy birthday to Jay Huff this year. Happy 27th birthday. But like last year they had posted happy 25th birthday. So they were off by a year, and
he just
Tony
wasn't
East,
a big enough deal till last
Tony
year.
East, who covers it. He is 28. So we had a minor birthday snafu this year.
I mean, did the Pacers try to rescind the trade after that? That's the grounds for it.
I mean, maybe.
So, Lucas, you had teased this before, but what would be a weirdo lineup you want to see Jordi Fernandez try this year?
All right, aside from the 5 rookies, because that's just such an easy cop-out answer.
That's going to happen. If it doesn't, does he get fired?
If it doesn't happen in April, I'll be... I'll be
Health
annoyed.
permitting, obviously. That would be
Oh.
the one thing that would suck is that, if one of these guys is just always injured, that would blow.
It was a very Nets thing to have happen where we're at media day and someone asked about Yegor and Sean Marks is in the middle of like, oh, well, we just love him as a person and the hardworking and the basketball intellect. And by the way, he tore his plantar fascia right after summer league, so he's going to be out through the preseason.
That's what
I was
media
like,
days become, too, is like these injuries are
Secret
revealed, or these surgeries. It's like, yeah.
I was like, what? Yeah, it was, but yeah, it has. At least they're not the Sixers, I guess. That was really depressing.
Hey,
yeah.
Joel Embiid didn't fall through the practice floor. I call that an absolute victory for Philadelphia.
And they're bringing back the best jerseys in basketball. So they're bringing back the black 2001 retros.
Oh, that's right, the Iverson era. I made a joke. I was like, I can just see Matt Geiger now. That's who I always associate with those jerseys.
Did you see the Cooper Flag opening a pack of basketball cards from the year he was born and not knowing who Eric Snow was hurt me.
Ooh.
What?
Yeah, you didn't know who Eric
That's
Snow
not
was.
okay.
I can
That's
see
not
Eric
okay.
Snow making 12-footers on the baseline right now in my head.
He knew who Antoine Walker was and not Rashad McCants. So
Ooh.
that's okay.
If we needed any more evidence that Cooper Flag is going to be a bust, there it is.
That's it.
No, the 5 I would say is like probably beyond it has to include some of the rookies. I would say Yegor and Nolan have to be in this. I think Danny, Wolf, and then like 2 real wings, probably like Michael Porter Jr. and maybe Cam Thomas as just, man, that's like a kind of a real, a theoretically real lineup that is super offensively juiced and could just actually be fun to watch. So you get Nolan, Yegor, Cam Thomas, MPJ, and Danny Wolf. Kind of positionally viable if Yegor is like guarding a 3. I mean, not defensively good, but viable. And like you actually get to see, all right, if you're playing Danny Wolf and you're playing your 2 top guards and you say you're going to play them together, let's throw them out there and see if they can really score and like lead an offense with real talent on the floor in Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. That's a lineup I would say I would like to see.
I fave it. I want to see Yegor plus all bigs. So let's get Claxton, Clowney,
Dayron.
Danny Wolf, and then so we have Yegor, and then who's the other? Like, do we throw Dayron in there? That seems a little much. Maybe Michael Porter Jr. is pretty big.
MPJ 's
Maybe he
big.
can qualify. Yeah.
Yeah. God, there was a possession in the preseason game where MPJ and Cam Thomas were on the weak side and they were Xing out like the whole half and threw the skip pass, and they just were like walking around and escorting whoever caught it to the rim, and I was like, oh man, I'm ready to see this year. MPJ
those
was
two-
not exactly diving on the floor last night.
The crazy thing is, you remember it wasn't a narrative, it was a real thing with how like his shoulder was a real issue. Like he was hurt in the playoffs.
He said that
and it was
today.
like,
He said
look
that.
how
He
tough
couldn't-
this guy is. He's getting after it. And then you see efforts like that. And it's like, well, which is it?
They know. Well, yeah.
And the way he defended it during like the 2023 title push was like that
Yeah.
was
It's
looked
in
like
there.
a real
Or, I
NBA
mean,
defense.
it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
he's good.
Before we force you to stake your reputation on predictions, which
Nice.
this will be on the permanent record, anything else we haven't touched on about the Nets? Any aspect of them that you think this is kind of like the under the radar question, but just like that thoughts you've had about them that maybe aren't out there for wider consumption? Like just what warrants discussion about the Nets this year that we haven't hit?
Nothing I haven't said. I think I'll just keep coming back to like this feels like the start of a mad scientist's experiment, and whether you can really build a team again in a big market, just sheer flexibility and cap space and assets and just optionality and like down to the way they play on the court on offense, down to their draft strategy, down to like the wider roster construction. They could be a sleeping giant. They could fall on their face and deserve everyone laughing at them and totally have a new front office in 2 years. And I genuinely don't know which way it's going to go. I've been, some days I wake up, I feel like a homer because I'm genuinely interested in it. And then other times I'm excommunicated from the facility because I'm trashing their draft. That didn't happen, but I feel like it was going to. I was like, oh, damn, I'm really going in on Yegor. And then I met him.
Now I'm wondering if it did happen, they might have radicalized you like to really buying into their draft. It seems like so that you can get back in the building.
They put me through a re-education. Yeah, they put me through a re-education camp. I was like Clockwork Orange watching Yegor.
I think
read
like
the floor.
Dan, we've talked about it a million times, but like when the Grizzlies were playing without screens on offense last year, I just like couldn't shut up about it for the same reason. It's like I don't care if it works. I just love that someone's trying this weird thing. I think you're right. I think that is like the true, like, it's going to carry through as the story of this Nets season. It was just like, this is why, like, no one's doing this. It might work. And if it does, how cool is that? And if it doesn't, still kind of like credit for trying. I know my opinion. So I think they'll be interesting at least. All right, Dan, get the predictions. Let's go.
Lucas, how many games do you have them winning? And I think the other side of that is, how many teams in the Eastern Conference do you think they'll be better than this year, if any?
I have them at 23 wins, which is again over their Vegas over-under. It really just comes down to how aggressive the front office wants to be in chasing this draft pick, because they stumbled over themselves last year, and I think you can justify it by saying, well, we had 5 picks, and it's about setting the culture. Okay, great. But, like, this year is the year. So let's see it. That being said, I do think they're going to play hard. I trust Jordi to get a lot out of guys. And so I'll go with 23 wins. Was there a second part of that question? Oh, the East. Their competition is really what? The Wizards and the Hornets. And
I think it might only be the Wizards.
Yeah, the Hornets, yeah. And maybe if one team has a random season from hell, like if the Celtics...
Sixers could be down there again. Who knows?
Right.
Like the
Celtics, Sixers...
I can't... The Celtics, just there are a lot of people who's like, yeah, I think they're going to be fighting for the 6th seed, or they'll certainly be in play-in territory. And I feel like they've telegraphed that they actively do not want that to happen. And so I've just like kind of put a pin in the Celtics as that might be the team that shocks everybody by being deliberately way worse than everybody seems to think they're going to be.
All it takes is one Jaylen Brown, Draymond
Bruised
Green
eyebrow.
2021 season where Draymond like gets an injury and he's like, actually, I'm out for the whole year.
I'm good. Yeah.
I think they'll be the second worst team in the East. Likely the Wizards, maybe someone else. I don't know. You know, I did say the funniest and most Nets outcome last year would be if their pick was one behind the Suns, and I almost got there. I think the funniest outcome this year would be the worst record in the league and falling to 5th.
Oh.
Is that funny? Is that really funny at that point?
Dark black comedy.
In a Shakespearean sort of way, I guess. The Nets are fascinating, and I hope to more than just me.
Yeah, they're fascinating to us and to all the sickos that listen and watch. Can you just tell them where they can find you and all the fantastic work that you do, Lucas?
Of course. Yeah, as Dan said, Lucas Kaplan on socials. And then for all Nets stuff, netsdaily.com. Last year was our 20th year in existence. Shout out to the legendary Bob of Nets Daily, who runs all our socials. And to this day, writes like 3 things a day at 80 years old. A legend. And Basketball Insiders for general WNBA, NBA stuff. Some freelance pieces there. But yeah, that's where I'm at. And generally around the internet doing great pods such as this one. I had a great time.